What if the greatest prison in your life has no walls, no locks, and no guards? Yet every day you willingly step inside it without even realizing it. Most people think freedom comes from proving themselves. Buddhist teachings reveal the opposite. Every reaction strengthens the chain that binds you. The power of ignoring others isn't about becoming cold. It is the law of detachment that protects your peace. In Buddhism and timeless Buddhist wisdom, you don't ignore toxic people because they are worthless. You ignore what steals your awareness. Stop ignoring and start living your life by mastering the one habit that makes you emotionally untouchable. Stay until the end, because the final lesson reveals why one silent decision can free you from years of invisible suffering. 1. Your real enemy lives within. Why can one sentence shatter your peace for an entire day, while another person's harsh words disappear without leaving a mark? The answer will surprise you, but it has very little to do with the words themselves. A quiet teaching says, no wound enters without an open door. The deepest prison is rarely built by other people. It is built by the part of you that still waits to be accepted. Therefore, the freedom you seek does not begin by changing the world. It begins by discovering the door that has remained open within you. Imagine a small house during heavy rain. The rain falls everywhere without choosing one roof over another, but only the house with a crack begins to flood. Criticism is the same. People's opinions fall constantly, but they only become suffering where an unseen crack already exists. Therefore, your real enemy is not the voice outside. It is the hidden belief inside that whispers, maybe they are right. The answer becomes clearer with every moment you dare to observe your own mind. A wise monk once watched two disciples receive the very same insult. One smiled with quiet compassion. The other carried anger for weeks. The words were identical, but the identities were different. One disciple had nothing to defend. The other believed his worth depended on another person's approval. Therefore, the insult found an open door. Every opinion can knock upon your mind, but only attachment invites it to stay. Have you noticed which voices still echo long after the speaker has walked away? Tonight, close your eyes for one peaceful minute. Remember one painful comment that still visits your heart. Do not repeat the voice. Instead, gently ask, what part of me believed it? Sit with the silence instead of the story. That quiet honesty begins healing. Which opinion still lives rent-free inside your mind? What identity are you protecting? If you truly trusted yourself, would those words still hurt? The day you stop seeking permission to be enough is the day the world loses its power to disturb your peace. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're not sure what to say, just type, "My mind stays untouched." 2. Stop borrowing your worth. Why does the urge to explain yourself feel almost impossible to resist? Why do a few misunderstood moments keep replaying inside your mind long after everyone else has moved on? A quiet teaching says, the one who must be understood has already forgotten himself. That sentence feels uncomfortable because it points toward a hidden truth. You are not protecting your words. You are protecting an identity that still depends on someone else's approval. Therefore, every defense quietly strengthens the very prison you wish to escape. Look at a tree standing at the edge of a forest. It never asks the wind if it deserves to grow. It never waits for another tree to approve the next ring within its trunk. Growth happens because it remains faithful to its own nature. Your heart longs for that same freedom. But when your peace depends on being accepted, every disagreement feels like a threat. Therefore, your energy flows into proving yourself instead of becoming yourself. The answer to this struggle is closer than it first appears. A monk once smiled after hearing unfair criticism. His student asked why he stayed silent instead of correcting every false word. The monk replied, Truth does not become stronger because someone agrees with it. His silence was not weakness. It was the quiet confidence of someone who had stopped borrowing worth from passing opinions. Every voice can question your path, but only your attachment gives those voices authority. Have you noticed how exhausting it is to carry the burden of being understood by everyone? Tonight, imagine speaking your deepest truth with complete honesty. Now, imagine allowing your words to dissolve into silence without chasing agreement, applause, or permission. Stay with the stillness. Feel how much strength lives there. Ask yourself, how much of my life is spent proving who I am? What if silence spoke louder than every defense? Who would you become if your value could no longer be measured by another person's opinion? The moment you stop borrowing your worth from the world is the moment your spirit remembers it was whole all along. 3. Praise is the other prison. Most people believe criticism is the greatest threat to inner peace, but there is another prison that hides behind a smiling face. Praise. It feels warm, comforting, even deserved. Yet a quiet teaching reminds us, chains made of gold still bind the feet. The answer to lasting freedom is not simply learning to ignore harsh voices. It is also learning not to depend on kind ones. Therefore, the heart begins to breathe only when it no longer needs either. Imagine a small boat resting at the edge of a river. It is tied with soft silk instead of a rough rope. The knot feels gentle, almost beautiful, but the boat still cannot move. Praise works in the same way. At first, it inspires you, but if your identity begins feeding on admiration, every future choice becomes an attempt to earn another compliment. Therefore, what once felt like encouragement quietly becomes attachment. The prison changes its appearance, but it remains a prison. A monk once received deep respect wherever he traveled. People bowed, thanked him, and called him wise. Yet, each evening, he sat alone beneath the fading light, reminding himself that today's admiration could become tomorrow's silence. He accepted gratitude with humility, but never built his identity upon it. Every compliment was welcomed, but none were carried home. That was his freedom. Can you feel how exhausting it is to keep performing for approval, even when the applause sounds beautiful? Tonight, remember the greatest compliment you have ever received. Notice how your mind still wants to protect it, repeat it, or prove it true again. Do not judge that desire. Simply observe it with quiet honesty. Ask yourself, do compliments secretly guide my decisions? What happens if admiration suddenly disappears? Can your peace remain untouched when no one notices your effort? The strongest spirit is not the one that is praised the most, but the one that continues walking its path with the same quiet heart, whether the world applauds or turns away. 4. Every reaction reveals your handle. Every emotional reaction quietly reveals something most people never notice. It shows the world where you can be pulled. One careless remark, one ignored message, one dismissive glance can change the direction of your entire day. But the real question is not why others provoke you. The deeper question is why those moments find such immediate access to your peace. A quiet teaching says, what moves too easily is rarely free. Therefore, every reaction becomes an invitation to discover the place where attachment still lives. Imagine a puppet dancing across a stage. The movements appear graceful, but they are never its own. Invisible strings decide every step. Human emotions can become those same strings. Anger, pride, fear, or the desperate need to be respected can pull your heart in directions you never intended to go. Therefore, the person who understands your emotional patterns no longer needs strength to disturb you. They only need to touch the right string. But there is a way to loosen every knot, and it begins with awareness instead of resistance. A monk once listened while a traveler insulted him with growing frustration. The students expected an argument, but the monk simply watched his own breathing. Later, he said, "The greatest victory is seeing the fire before becoming the flame." He understood that every insult first knocks on the mind before it enters the heart. When awareness arrives before reaction, the chain quietly breaks. Have you noticed how often your first impulse asks for immediate action, even when silence would protect your peace? The next time someone provokes you, do not rush toward a response. Pause. Feel the urge rising inside your chest. Stay with that feeling without feeding it. Watch it appear, remain for a moment, then slowly fade. In that quiet space, freedom begins. Ask yourself, which emotion controls me the fastest? Who already knows the buttons that disturb my peace? What if your greatest answer was no reaction at all? The soul that cannot be pulled by every passing hand becomes impossible to imprison, because true strength begins where unnecessary reactions end. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're not sure what to say, just type, "My mind stays untouched." 5. Silence is not weakness. Why do so many people mistake silence for surrender? Why does walking away from an argument seem like defeat when it may be the greatest expression of inner strength? A quiet teaching says, "Still water does not argue with the wind." The mind that has found peace no longer feels responsible for correcting every opinion or answering every accusation. Therefore, silence is not the absence of courage. It is the presence of deep understanding that not every battle deserves your spirit. Look toward the mountains. They never chase the echoes that bounce across their cliffs. They remain unmoved while every sound eventually fades into emptiness. Human conflict follows the same rhythm. Harsh words rise, emotions grow louder, but they cannot survive forever unless someone keeps feeding them. Therefore, every unnecessary argument asks you to spend your peace on something that cannot truly nourish your heart. The strongest person is often the one who quietly refuses the invitation to suffer. A monk once watched two strangers shouting at each other beside a narrow path. One demanded that he decide who was right. The monk bowed gently, smiled with compassion, and continued walking. His students later asked why he had not spoken. He answered, "Some fires disappear when no one carries more wood." His silence was not fear. It was wisdom protecting what anger could never improve. Have you noticed how often a single sentence spoken in frustration creates pain that lasts far longer than the original insult? The next time criticism reaches you, picture it as distant thunder rolling across a wide valley. Listen without rushing to answer. Let the sound pass through the sky instead of settling inside your heart. Stay with your breathing until the urge to defend yourself begins to soften. Then ask, do I confuse silence with losing? When has speaking only made suffering deeper? What truly deserves my voice, and what deserves none at all? The day you no longer need the final word is the day your peace becomes stronger than anyone else's opinion. Ignore the fire, not the person. Many people believe that ignoring others means becoming cold, distant, or uncaring. But that misunderstanding quietly creates more suffering. The deeper practice is not ignoring the person. It is refusing to feed the fire that has taken hold of the moment. A gentle teaching reminds us, feed understanding, not the flame. Therefore, true freedom is never built on rejection. It is built on the wisdom to see pain without becoming part of it. This is where compassion becomes stronger than reaction. Imagine a fire burning in the middle of a quiet forest. It appears powerful, but every flame depends on fresh wood. The moment the wood is removed, the fire slowly forgets how to burn. Human conflict follows the same law. Anger asks for more anger. Defensiveness asks for another defense. Pride waits for pride to answer back. Therefore, every reaction you offer becomes another piece of wood. But the moment you stop feeding the fire, something unexpected begins to happen. The heat starts losing its strength. A monk once met a traveler whose heart was heavy with bitterness. The traveler spoke with sharp words, hoping to provoke an argument. The monk listened with calm attention, but his eyes held compassion instead of resistance. When the traveler finally became quiet, the monk simply said, "Your suffering does not need another home." Nothing more was required. The anger had nowhere to grow because it found no fuel. Have you noticed how many conflicts survive only because both people keep returning to the same fire? The next time someone brings anger into your path, pause before carrying it into your own heart. Picture their emotion resting on a single leaf, floating gently down a peaceful stream. Watch it drift farther away without chasing it or pushing it back. Let awareness remain while the storm continues its journey. Then ask yourself, am I resisting this person or only their pain? Which conflicts in my life survive because both sides keep feeding them? The moment you stop feeding another person's fire is the moment your own heart remembers how to remain light. 7. Protect your inner gate. Not every opinion deserves a place inside your mind. Yet many people welcome every voice, every judgment, and every passing emotion as though they all carry equal truth. This is where inner peace quietly begins to disappear. A gentle teaching reminds us, an open gate welcomes both wisdom and dust. Therefore, freedom is not found by hearing everything. It is found by choosing what is worthy of entering your awareness. The question is not whether people will speak. The question is whether you will invite their words to stay. Imagine an ancient temple standing peacefully through centuries of storms. Its strength does not come from thick walls alone. It survives because every door is not left open. The keepers know when to welcome a traveler, but they also know when to close the gate before darkness enters. Your mind deserves the same care. Every opinion cannot become your teacher. Every criticism cannot become your identity. Therefore, protecting your inner world is not selfish. It is an act of quiet wisdom. A monk once told his disciples, "The loudest voice is rarely the truest one." One student spent his life chasing approval, while another learned to pause before accepting any judgment. Years later, only one carried a peaceful heart. The difference was not intelligence or strength, it was discernment. He understood that awareness is a sacred place, not a public road. Have you noticed how easily strangers can influence your emotions, even though they have never truly earned your trust? Tonight, close your eyes and picture your mind as a peaceful monastery resting beyond the noise of the world. Watch each thought arrive at the gate. Before allowing it inside, gently ask, do you bring wisdom or only noise? Let the unworthy thoughts continue on their way without anger or fear. Then reflect with honesty. Who already has unlimited access to your peace? Which voices have never earned that place? What boundary have you been afraid to create? The heart that wisely guards its inner gate discovers a freedom no outside opinion can ever take away. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're not sure what to say, just type, "My mind stays untouched." Let the ego starve. Have you ever noticed how one explanation leads to another, yet the need to justify yourself never truly ends? You clarify your intentions, defend your decisions, and hope that one more sentence will finally bring peace. But something deeper keeps asking for more. A quiet teaching says, the ego eats attention and calls it survival. Therefore, the endless need to explain is often not protecting your truth. It is protecting an image that fears being misunderstood. The more you feed it, the hungrier it becomes. Imagine a shadow stretching across the ground at sunset. It looks powerful, almost alive, but it exists only because light falls in a certain way. The moment the lamp no longer shines behind it, the shadow quietly disappears. The ego follows a similar path. It grows larger every time it receives attention through arguments, comparisons, or the desperate need to be right. Therefore, real strength is not found in winning every conversation. It is found in no longer needing every conversation to confirm your worth. A monk was once accused of something he had never done. His students expected him to defend himself immediately, but he simply listened with a peaceful face. Days later, the truth revealed itself without his struggle. The students asked how he remained so calm. The monk replied, "Truth does not become truer because I shout." His silence did not protect an image, it protected his peace. Can you feel how much energy disappears when you stop carrying the burden of proving yourself to every passing opinion? The next time you feel the urge to defend yourself, do only one thing first. Take one slow breath. Notice the impulse without obeying it. Let the moment become spacious before your words leave your lips. In that pause, ask yourself, what am I really trying to protect? How often do I defend an image instead of my true self? What remains when that image quietly fades away? The day your ego stops asking the world to confirm your value is the day your spirit begins living with a freedom no opinion can ever steal. 9. Become emotionally unhookable. True strength is not found in controlling other people. It is found in reaching a place where other people can no longer control you. This is the freedom many search for, yet few truly understand. A quiet teaching reminds us freedom begins where manipulation finds no grip. Therefore, the goal is not to silence every critical voice. The goal is to become so deeply rooted within yourself that no passing opinion can uproot your peace. That transformation begins inside, long before the world ever notices it. Look at the lotus resting peacefully upon the water. The same water that supports its life never stains its petals. It remains untouched because its nature is no longer controlled by its surroundings. Your mind can grow in the same way. Criticism may appear, praise may arrive, rejection may visit, acceptance may follow. But none of these experiences have to become your identity. Therefore, emotional freedom is not about escaping the world. It is about learning to remain inwardly clear while living fully within it. A monk once walked through a crowded village where some people honored him while others mocked him. His pace never changed. His face carried the same quiet compassion toward both groups. A student finally asked how he remained so steady. The monk smiled and said, "If my peace rises with praise, it will fall with blame." That simple truth changed the student's life forever. Can you see how every reaction quietly hands another person a piece of your freedom? But the moment awareness replaces impulse, those invisible chains begin to disappear. Today, imagine every insult, every judgment, and every misunderstanding passing across your mind like birds crossing an endless sky. You notice them, but you do not chase them. You allow them to continue their journey while your heart remains open and still. Then ask yourself, which situations still hook my emotions? What would emotional independence look like today? Who loses power over my life the moment I stop reacting? The day you no longer need the world to approve, fear, or understand you is the day your mind becomes a place no one else can conquer. Nothing needs defending. The deepest freedom does not arrive when the world finally understands you. It arrives when one final illusion quietly falls away. The belief that your true self must always be defended. Most suffering begins the moment you feel responsible for protecting an image, a reputation, or a story about who you are. But a timeless teaching reminds us, truth never rushes to prove itself. Therefore, every moment spent defending what is already real quietly pulls you away from the peace you have been seeking. Look toward the night sky. The moon never argues with the clouds that temporarily hide its light. It never struggles to convince the earth that it is still shining. It simply remains what it has always been. The clouds pass in their own time. Human judgment follows the same pattern. Opinions appear, spread, and disappear. Therefore, when your identity depends on answering every misunderstanding, your peace begins to rise and fall with passing weather instead of resting in something deeper and unchanging. An old monk was once falsely accused by a visitor who misunderstood his actions. The people around him waited for an explanation, but he remained calm. Days later, the misunderstanding faded on its own, just as clouds drift away from the moon. His students asked why he had not defended himself. The monk smiled gently and said, "What is true does not become more true because I argue for it." His silence was not surrender. It was complete trust in a truth that needed no performance. Have you noticed how exhausting it is to protect an identity every single day? Tonight, sit quietly for 1 full minute. Feel your breathing. Feel your existence without explaining it, describing it, or proving it to anyone. Let yourself simply be. In that stillness, ask, what if my worth required no witness? Which identity have I grown tired of maintaining? Can I exist without performing myself for the world? The day nothing inside you needs defending is the day nothing outside you can truly disturb, because the strongest mind is the one that rests peacefully in its own truth. We would love to hear your thoughts. If you are not sure what to say, just type, "My mind stays untouched." Bonus principle: become the empty sky. This is the final teaching that quietly gathers every lesson into a single truth. You have learned to question criticism, release praise, protect your inner gate, and stop feeding unnecessary conflict. But none of these practices become complete until you discover what has been present beneath them all along. A gentle teaching says, "The sky keeps nothing, yet loses nothing." Therefore, the deepest freedom is not found by controlling your experiences, it is found by no longer holding on to them. This is where the journey quietly reaches its destination. Look up at the open sky. Clouds appear from every direction. Some are dark with storms, others glow with gentle light. They drift across the same endless space, but the sky never clings to one or resists another. It allows every cloud to arrive, but none are mistaken for its true nature. Your mind can learn this same wisdom. Thoughts, praise, blame, fear, and admiration will continue to pass through your life. Therefore, suffering begins only when you claim them as your identity instead of watching them move on. An elderly monk once sat beside a river while his students argued over who had spoken unfairly to them. He listened without interruption, then pointed toward the evening sky. "Do you see those clouds?" he asked. "They cannot remain in the sky, no matter how dark they become." In that quiet moment, the students understood their peace had never been stolen by another person's words. It had only been hidden behind the habit of holding on. Can you imagine what life would feel like if every opinion simply came and went like changing weather? Today, sit in silence for a few moments. Watch your thoughts like clouds drifting across a vast sky. Let every opinion arrive without welcoming it. Let every memory leave without chasing it. Own nothing except your awareness of the present moment. Then ask yourself, what if every painful opinion was only passing weather? Who am I beneath every label? If nothing outside could define me, what freedom would remain? The moment you become the open sky, the world's storms may continue, but they will never again become who you are. Remember this real truth. The goal is not to stop people from judging you, but to become someone whom judgment can no longer imprison. Quick summary. 1. Your real enemy lives within. People's words only hurt when they touch an unresolved part of your identity. The real battle is never outside. It is within your attachment to how you are seen. Healing begins when you stop blaming others for emotions you have never understood. Inner freedom begins the moment you examine your own reactions instead of their opinions. 2. Stop borrowing your worth. The need to explain yourself is often the need to be accepted. Self-worth borrowed from others will always feel temporary and fragile. You become emotionally independent when your value no longer depends on agreement. Peace begins where the desire for validation ends. Praise is the other prison. If criticism controls your pain, praise controls your happiness. Depending on compliments is another form of emotional attachment. Freedom is not avoiding criticism. It is no longer depending on applause. A peaceful mind remains steady in both praise and rejection. Every reaction reveals your handle. Every emotional reaction exposes where your peace can be disturbed. Reacting without awareness hands control of your emotions to others. Emotional discipline is the foundation of true inner strength. Your greatest power is choosing your response instead of acting on impulse. 5. Silence is not weakness. Silence is often the highest expression of self-control. Not every misunderstanding deserves your explanation. The strongest people protect their peace more than their pride. Sometimes the wisest answer is complete stillness. 6. Ignore the fire, not the person. Ignoring is not rejecting people. It is refusing to feed unnecessary conflict. You can care about someone without participating in their negativity. Compassion includes protecting your own emotional well-being. Peace grows when you stop giving energy to emotional battles. 7. Protect your inner gate. Your attention is one of your life's greatest treasures. Not every opinion deserves space inside your mind. Healthy boundaries protect inner peace without creating hatred. Choose carefully what you allow to influence your consciousness. 8. Let the ego starve. The ego survives by constantly seeking recognition and defense. Every unnecessary explanation strengthens attachment to identity. Freedom appears when you stop protecting the image of yourself. A quiet ego creates a peaceful life. 9. Become emotionally unhookable. Nobody can manipulate emotions that are rooted in awareness. True strength is remaining calm in the presence of criticism. Emotional independence makes external opinions lose their power. The unshakable mind cannot be controlled by the world. 10. Nothing needs defending. Your true nature does not require constant proof or approval. The urge to defend yourself often comes from fear, not truth. Real confidence is calm, silent, and deeply rooted within. When nothing needs defending, everything becomes lighter. Bonus principle. Become the empty sky. Thoughts, praise, and criticism are temporary visitors. Awareness remains untouched by every passing emotion. Inner peace grows when you stop identifying with every thought. Freedom is realizing that your true self has always existed beyond judgment. The greatest prison has never been another person's opinion. It has always been our attachment to it. Every time you react without awareness, you surrender a piece of your inner freedom. But the moment you stop seeking permission to be yourself, something extraordinary happens. Criticism loses its sting, praise loses its grip, and silence becomes your greatest teacher. That is the quiet revolution Buddhist wisdom invites us into, not changing the world around us, but transforming the mind that experiences it. Zen teaches that the mind becomes clear not when the world becomes quieter, but when we stop chasing every sound that passes through it. As one timeless saying reminds us, when there is nothing to defend, there is nothing that can be defeated. Carry this truth with you today. Every opinion will fade, every voice will pass, but the peace you cultivate within can remain untouched for a lifetime. If this wisdom resonated with you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs inner peace, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Buddhist insights on living a peaceful, awakened, and emotionally free life.